The Army Painter is my favorite hobby company in the entire world. My desk is literally full of Army Painter products, and it takes me from being an average painter to putting above tabletop standard models out into the tournament scene. Not only that, but the Army Painter has sponsored more competitive play than any other hobby company in the industry. They allow us to keep doing the things that we do. If you enjoy the Army Painter as much as I do, head over to thearmypainter.com where you can use the discount code ARTOFWAR5 to get a discount on your next order.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another exciting Art of War stream. Today, Nick and I are going to be talking about some more interesting lists from the upcoming World Championships of Warhammer in Atlanta.
That's right. We finally got the list. We finally got the pods. There's data to be analyzed and just a lot of hot takes that John and I are going to be discussing for you.
Absolutely. Last week, we had a couple of the coaches already talking about some of the Art of War specific lists that we were bringing to the event, but that was right after the list went live, so we hadn't collected all the data yet. Luckily, thanks to some enterprising friends, we now have counts of what factions are being taken. So we're going to talk about the wider meta. We're also going to talk about some of the more interesting lists that are going to be there now that we've taken our time to really digest what's going on. These aren't the hot takes. These are the baked takes. But we're still recording this before we head off to the World Championships. If you really like this content, make sure that you like this content. Of course, you can get more by watching that video we did last week. And if you want to see even more Art of War videos, the best way to do that is to subscribe to this channel. That'll get you notified each time we go live, because we go live several times a week with fresh new content for you. And if you want even more than that, you can find it in the War Room.
That's right. In the War Room, we have 3 different coaching matches per week. We also have all kinds of exciting stuff like faction fundamentals, jack theories, what's the play puzzles, all kinds of different tools and elements. And now we're getting more into coaching match recaps to help you learn the game and become your best. Really get into the thoughts of those high-level players.
Absolutely. If you haven't seen the War Room recently, make sure you check out the free trial that we have going on right now. You can check it out. The link is in the description below. That's thewarroom.vhx.tv. You can get a free 3-day trial if you haven't seen our War Room content and you're a little curious about what we're doing there.
That's right. Speaking of what's in the War Room, what's in our graphs, John?
So this is just a real quick count of what factions are going to be at the WCW, how they're submitted on BCP. So real simple. Necrons and Astra Militarum are by far the most popular armies there. We can see that Necrons and Astra Militarum are sitting at 30 and 27, I believe, members being taken. And then the next thing that's being taken is below 20. It's like Blood Angels at like 17 or 18. There's just not that many things besides Necrons and Guard that are really being taken in large numbers.
Those are the two modes the most often taken by a long shot. Then it kind of flattens out quite a bit. And what's interesting is most of the variations of Necrons and most of the variations of Astra Militarum are basically oops all guns. Like here's my Leman Russes on top of my Hydras, on top of my Hellhounds, or here's my Silent King, Doomsday Arcs, Doomsides, here's the guns.
Yeah, by the majority of the Necrons are Hypercrypt. Obviously, Astra Militarum only has 1 detachment at the moment because we don't have a codex yet. So they're all the combined regiment. But it seems that the 2 most common factions are both heavily leaning on being a predominantly shooting faction, which means that a lot of these players, which you'd expect that all the people invited to the World Championships to be top players, they all seem to think that taking guns is the move right now.
Well, it goes a little bit further than that, because if I dare go to the 4th and 5th most popular armies, Tau and Adeptus Sororitas. Tau, obviously, one of the quintessential shooting factions in Warhammer 40k. But then Sisters, as of late, as a meta choice, really gravitates towards Bringers of Flame. Triple Exorcist is definitely on the menu. Triple Castigator, Volgons. All that stuff is pretty commonly seen in most Sisters lists. And from what I can tell, they've gone even further into that shooting category.
Yeah, and of course, the GW terrain is going to play a little bit different from other event formats, but it definitely seems like everyone is thinking guns are the way to go on the GW tables. Of course, not everyone agrees on that. Blood Angels are a predominantly melee army. They're the most recent codex, so I'm not surprised to see them be the most popular Space Marine faction. They also are a faction that you just generally see a lot of whenever they're even remotely good. People like Blood Angels. People want to play them.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting is the quantity of Blood Angels. I'm actually quite surprised to see so many of them. And their lists look like standard Blood Angel lists for the most part, like Sanguinary Guard, Death Company, some Space Marine things. Yeah. I'm really curious to see how they do, because most of the shooting lists definitely have the oppressive firepower to put that down in like one battle round, one good shooting phase. But if the Blood Angels can like terrain hop and get in there, that could be a ticket to victory.
It makes sense though, because if there's a lot of gun armies out there, you would theoretically rather play a fast melee army like Blood Angels than a slower melee army like Dark Angels. So I can see why Blood Angels are the most commonly taken chapter here.
Yeah. What else is interesting is that beyond our top 5 most common factions, we have a lot more mid-range factions like Tyranids, Eldari, Chaos Demons, Votann. These are all factions that kind of are balanced in nature and play a very normal game of Warhammer with you.
Yeah, and I think that's just things evening out where those are generically popular armies. Tyranids just have a high population right now because they were the starter army of the edition. They've just had good player numbers for all of 10th edition, which I like, of course.
You've also got to skew this a little bit because 50% of the field is best overalls, which many of them are fantastic hobbyists, and it's not as quick and easy for a hobbyist type person to just pick up and play a meta faction.
Yeah, the kind of player that's going to score a best overall at an event and earn a golden ticket that way, I would say they're unlikely to then take a 3-colored, guard army.
Wouldn't be me.
Wouldn't be you. No, that's would be me. All right. So interesting stuff out here. I think just looking at the other end of this, what surprises me most for armies that are not taken very often, Genestealer Cult is number 1.
Yeah, Genestealer Cult is such a strong faction right now. But you know what? They are they're unpopular. They always are.
Yeah, but I had a theory that Genestealer Cult was more popular among, I don't know how else to say this, players that are more invested in Warhammer. Like players who are willing to spend to buy an army regardless of the cost, right? Some hobbyists will look at an army and say, maybe I don't want to buy Genestealer Cult because that's going to require 30 boxes and this Custodes army is going to require 10 boxes.
Yeah.
But then, some of us are so addicted that we will go buy 30 boxes of Genestealer Cult just to play the army. And I would have thought that among top players, because Genestealer Cult is, a high skill, difficult to play army, I would have expected them to be more popular when you're at an invitational like the WCW.
Yeah, I definitely consider bringing them myself. I've been really enjoying the Four-Armed Emperor lately, but one of the things that really dissuaded me from bringing them, and perhaps this was a thought that other top players had when they were thinking about what faction to play, is that you can just biff your comeback to life rolls. And in a tournament like the WCW, consistency is king. Like you lose a game, you're almost certainly out of the event.
Yep.
And if you just have that one bad game, which I can tell you from a statistical standpoint, I played like 20 plus games of GSC thus far. It's about 1 in 5 games you roll that bad on your comeback to life rolls. You're going to hit that once, maybe twice in this event. And like you got to win those games too. Can be very hard.
That's fair. But a thing that was not on my bingo card was that Genestealer Cult would be less represented than armies like Imperial Knights. Other than that, I'm not surprised by the armies at the lower end of the spectrum here. Agents of the Imperium being the lowest taken army, no shock there. It's brand new, ton of models, and no one so far has really been playing it. Other than that, Admech, Orcs, Chaos Knights down the bottom. Again, there's so many more Imperial Knights than Chaos Knights. It's a little bit of a surprise to me.
I am a little surprised that generic Space Marines, Thousand Suns, and Dark Angels are all taken in as few quantities as we're seeing here. I feel like all 3 of those armies have been relatively near the top in recent history, and the balanced data slate may have knocked them down a little bit, but to see them dwindle in numbers that much is pretty surprising to me.
All right. Well, do you want to go ahead and talk about some of the army lists that are actually being taken at this event?
Yeah.
Some of the more interesting ones.
So we've picked a few that are a little bit interesting from different regions and have some interesting play into the field here. So first up is Lachlan Rigg from Australia. He was a semifinalist last year, right, John?
That's correct. He ended up finishing 3rd at the WCW last year. So you know that he's hungry to get right back up there to the podium.
Yeah, you also know he's going to be super effective with his Blood Angel army. Just breaking it down, it looks like we've got a gaggle of characters. Captain with the Jump Pack and Rageful Warrior, Lamardes, Mephiston, Dante, and a Lieutenant with a combi weapon.
That captain's actually on foot.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a foot captain. So that captain is the guy who once per game turns on sustained 3 for his weapons. And then that'll probably be the same time that he pops his once a game plus 3 attacks and dev wounds. So you'll end up with this captain rumbling in with 9 attacks into an oath target that's going to be rerolling hits sustained 3. And then, of course, he's attached to Assault Intercessors. If he charges something on objective, he's rerolling wounds, dev wounds as well. Yeah. I can tell you that captain by himself has an expected value of about 18 to 20 damage against the knight.
That's nuts. But you know what? There's also no shortage of hitting power in this army. We got 10 Death Company with Lamardes, 6 Sanguinary Guard with, I can only assume, is Dante, and then 2 more Sanguinary Guard units. 2 Ballistic Dreads for some long-range fire support. There's something we're seeing a lot more of at this tournament.
Yeah, I think they got cheap enough that they went across that line. And with Space Marines, you'll notice this a lot with the number of units they have. There's a line. 140, never taken. 130, 2 or 3 in every list. It's the same thing with Jump Pack Intercessors. When they cost 90, you never saw them. They went to 80, 3 in every list.
Blood Angels is personally not something that I have been taking very seriously in my preparation. Not that I think it's bad. I just didn't think it'd be a very popular choice here. Lachlan's not in my pod, thankfully, but I think he's going to go pretty far with this Blood Angels. I'm really curious to follow him.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking at like what this list is actually doing, I like that he has taken a little bit less trash than you would normally see in a Space Marine list, but everything that he has a lot of stuff that is good but not that expensive. Where 3 Sanguinary Guard with no character attached, they're good, but if you lose them, it's only 135 at least.
Yeah, and they can trade up pretty well.
Yeah, and a Ballistus Dread, same thing. It's good. You would be sad to lose it, but it seems that instead of having like 5 cheap less than 100 pieces that you would play with that are like going to go out there and deploy a teleport armor, he instead has like 4 130 point units that still require a bit of commit. They require a little more commitment to kill. And then hopefully he's going to be able to retaliate against those foes.
And one of the weaknesses to going wider like that is that you kind of lack that single damage activation that can really put down those hard targets. But he's got no shortage of that with the 10 Death Company and Lamardis and 6 Sanguinary Guard with Dante.
Yeah, and then that Captain and Assault Intercessor unit functions as a third hammer that's less durable than the other two, but once a game, it hits so hard that you have to take it seriously.
And it's a pretty dynamic tool since it's in transport with dudes inside of it.
You can advance and charge out of the transport. It is difficult to get around.
This army looks subtle and it looks kind of unassuming, very vanilla Blood Angels, just like looks like a Blood Angel army, but it's really good if you use it properly.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see how it does.
Next up, we've got an army that is a little bit unorthodox in approach. We've got Astra Militarum, but not the 10 tanks that you're fielding, John.
No, so this is completely different. This is from Nemo the Fish, who unfortunately, I don't know if that's his birth name, but Nemo the Fish is what Best Coast Pairing says. That's what we're rolling with. This is an Astra Militarum Horde. I've heard rumors of the Astra Horde doing well and winning events across the United States, but I've never had the opportunity to see it myself in person. This is a pretty darn cool list.
I don't understand what this is doing besides putting bodies on the board. And to my untrained eye, that's all it's doing. But maybe, John, you can break down further.
Yeah, so what this list is actually, is just a ton of guard bodies. So we'll run through it real quick. Leontis, 3 squads of the Tempestus Command Squad. That's going to go ahead and make it a total of 3 15-man Scion bricks. Then 1 Cadian Command Squad with a Cadian Shock Troop Squad. 2 Death Corps Marshals that are each going to be attached to 20 Death Corps of Krieg. So that's going to be 2 20-strong bricks that are 5 up Feel No Pain, heal D3 models in the command phase. Sly Marbo, Lone Op. Ursula Creed, Free Strat, and some extra orders. Gaunt's Ghost, not only is that a lone op, but it also has the really nice benefit of giving orders at the end of the movement phase. So what that means is that you're going to order your squads to move. They're going to move up 9 inches. Gaunt's Ghost is going to land and tell them a new order, and then they're going to forget move. But it's the end of the movement phase, so you don't really mind that you don't have move anymore. And so you can still get some good output out of that. Then 30 Catachan Jungle Fighters. Those are just cheap infantry with no characters skirmishing around, scoring and dying for the Emperor. 30 Kazarkin and 30 Aquilons means that you're bringing this to a total of 105 T3 bodies with a 4-up armor save. It is not difficult to give a lot of them 3-up armor saves. And so you can end up with just a lot of dudes. This shoots very hard against infantry because this entire army is going to be lethal hits against enemy non-vehicle monsters. Against those vehicles monsters, there's a lot of random plasma and meltaguns around, but frankly, it's going to struggle to kill multiple tanks at once after the melta mines and the grenades that you can throw out.
Yeah.
There's only so many of those that you can activate at once. So like if you push one Rhino in front of the list, it'll die, no questions. But I think it's going to struggle to kill a Gladiator Reaper at 24 inches.
Yeah. It's got 200 bodies, like a clean over 200 mount mark, and you can bring 20 of them back to life for 2 CP. Not to mention all the different ways that it's interacting with the table. You got the Scions and Deep Strike, you got the Quillons and 3-inch Deep Strike, outflanking with the Strat Reserve on the Revival unit, plus whatever you put into natural strategic reserves. This army scores points and denies points really, really well. It's got a lot of OC. It can manipulate how much OC is in specific places. It draws a card. It basically scores the card if it's anything positional based. And then beyond that, it can pinpoint its damage to get like 1 task done per turn, like you were saying. So
yeah,
if the card demands you kill a unit or the objective demands you kill this unit, it can muster that kind of strength. I think its real weakness is that nothing flies and it's all 6-inch moving infantry to start. So you can get jailed. If you get off to the wrong start, this can be really bad at clawing it back.
Yeah, and you can end up, of course, with the plentiful reserves it has will help. but it definitely is susceptible to being jailed. The other thing I'll notice is that there is no fallback and act in this list, and there's no, there's a little bit of that weakness. If you play into something melee heavy that can actually trap you in combat,
Yeah.
you're just rolling dice and trusting. So I think this is really interesting. I could see this doing well. I expect that this is going to have 1 or 2 games where the opponent shows up and they're like, actually, I can solve this, right? Like you play against World Leaders, the Exalted 8-bound are staged behind a wall. Your options are to move 6 and, get closer to them or to stay where you are.
Yeah.
I wouldn't enjoy that.
I could definitely see this army being a counter to the gun heavy expected meta, but like completely not acknowledging that like Blood Angels is a faction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look, those Blood Angels will die after they've committed.
Yeah, that's true. After the Blood Angels have killed all 200 guardsmen, they might die after that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it should be very interesting to see how Nemo does with this one.
Speaking of other fun names, we got Niklas Frichten from Germany. He's got my favorite faction in all of the lands. He's actually just fresh off of a super major win with his Chaos Demons.
Very
I'm
impressive.
really excited to see what this is about.
Yeah, so this Chaos Demon list is, like many others, taking a bunch of big boys. So I think we've got 4 big boys in this list, but they're perhaps not the ones that you're used to taking. You've got Be'lakor, a Lord of Change with the Everstave. Then you have Shalaxi Hellbane and Kairos Fateweaver as the 4 big monsters. The Changeling will be that last character as a nice lone up. Super interesting. I haven't seen a list without a Great Unclean One equivalent in a while for demons.
That's pretty crazy.
But
to
he
me.
just won a super major.
I am not here to question Niklas, just to learn from him. This is a pretty exciting time for demons. I'm really curious to see how far he goes, because also he is successful in Germany, where I believe they play mostly WTC-based terrain and formats. So in this case, demons are on a whole different terrain field, and I don't think he changed his list at all from event to event.
Yeah, I could explain why there's no Guos. They might actually have trouble fitting between some of those runes.
Yeah, honestly, that could be it.
Beyond that, 3 battle line units, 10 Plague Bears, 10 Horrors, and 3 Nurglings. It's just 1 to camp the home field. The Plague Bears will stick yet, and they'll move on if needed, or they'll stay and defend it if needed. Nurglings, exactly what you think. Horrors, very hard to shoot down. And beyond that, it's just 4 more fast units. 3x3 Screamers, 5 Seekers.
Yeah, this is definitely a list that I've conceptualized and put parts of it on the table, but not all of it in this specific conjunction. I like the 3x3 Screamers. I've been meaning to try that out, so I'm curious to see how they do for them. The rest of it is power in the shooting phase, which is not much for demons, but it's what you can bring. Lord Change and Fateweaver with Be'lakor attached basically allow you to pickpocket the range game, kind of send these little missiles of Screamers out and Seekers to mission play. Plague Bears and Pink Horrors kind of hold your primary, and then you do chip damage on the edges with these birds. And then if anything tries to press you, you've got Shalaxi.
Yeah, and I love that Shalaxi is in this list. I love Shalaxi in general. I think she's super cool. It's just that full rerolls against the things you need it against. Hard-hitting target, relatively durable. She's expensive, but there are a few things in the game that hit as hard as she does.
Yeah.
And she's a nice hard counter to all of those armies that are like reliant on their character. Because she's innate precision on her spear, and she will kill, I think, any character in the game. I cannot think of a character that is actually comfortable tanking Shalaxi.
Maybe Gulliman.
No, not even a chance.
That 3 up invul carries you far.
He doesn't have one.
Oh.
No.
Editing.
No. All right. So very interesting. I'm very curious to see how this does on the GW terrain, and I'm also just very curious to see how it does, kind of on the global stage.
Yeah, me too. I'm very curious to see if demons have what it takes to compete at the World Championships at Warhammer level. I'm hoping and happy to be proven wrong on that one.
Absolutely. So before we move on to the next list, I'm going to pass to Nick real quick because we're going to show you a quick preview from one of our wonderful sponsors, Snot Goblin.
If you're anything like me, you want your terrain to conform to the latest tournament standards. Who wants to buy terrain only to have it become useless a few months later? The new modular future-proof ruins from Snot Goblin Gaming can be assembled in practically any combination you or your tournament circuit of choice can imagine. The new future-proof ruins also come fully painted. Best of all, these new ruins are incredibly affordable, meaning you'll have plenty of extra money for models to play with at home. More info in the link in the description.
All right, we're back. So just 2 more lists that we wanted to talk about today. First one here, I mean, look, if I'm on the video, we knew that Tyranids were going to sneak in, right?
There's no surprise.
No surprises here. Let's go ahead and talk about this Tyranid list, Invasion Fleet, from Samuel Pope. So Sam Pope has done really well with Tyranids all year. He just won Battle for Salvation very recently with Tyranids. He also earlier in the year won the US Open in Dallas. So, he's already won a Games Workshop event this year. You could assume that he knows what it takes to get through this.
Yeah, he's a fantastic Tyranid specialist, and he's here with his own take on Invasion Fleet. Usually this is pretty monster heavy, at least that's what you've been running Invasion Fleet as, but this is the Sam Pope style of Horde Nids.
Still has 7 monsters in it, but less than 10.
Nids really do have a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So we start this off with a Winged Hive Tyrant. It has Alien Cunning, which is going to let Sam redeploy a few things. That Tervagon has Adaptive Biology, so it's going to have a Feel No Pain constantly, which is really important for this list because that Tervagon is going to want to be kept alive. We'll see that in a second. We start off with 10 Hormagaunts in the Battle Line detachment. Just one sneaky little thing to go fast, advance, and charge. And then it's 80 Termagants. 80.
Not only is it so many dudes, but they also heal. So they get really great play out of like stringing out onto an objective, getting shot, losing some casualties, and then in the command phase, rapid regeneration right back on that objective, retake the primary. They also get access to Feel No Pain because they're playing an invasion fleet, which means you can't just be like, here's my anti-infantry shooting squad. It's going to kill 20 Termagants in one go. With that Feel No Pain, it really stemmies that bleeding.
Absolutely. So because there's a Tervagon and your invasion fleet, you can heal quite a few different Termagants at once because you can actually heal 3 units, or you can heal 1 unit twice and another unit once. Between that Feel No Pain and the Venom Thrips we're about to talk about, you really can't trust anything to one-tap this Termagant unit at range. It actually takes an incredible amount of effort. Beyond that, we have 2 Lictors for good lone op scoring, a Biovore, 3 Venom Thrips as a nice little aura of stealth for all these infantry. Then the monsters, 3 Exocrines, 2 Tyrannofex with Rupture Cannons. So still plenty of shooting here. This army could be sustained hits against infantry if it needs to power through some infantry. But there's just a lot of Termagants playing the mission in front of the monsters. And it's going to take a lot to actually get through them. And Tyranids are a very good scoring army.
Yeah, the way you'd want to play against 80 Termagants, 10 Hormagaunts, and a Tervagon is to just like max damage right in the face to it, so you get through it as quick as possible before it outscores you. But in your attempt, you're going to get met by 3 Exocrines and 2 Tyrannofexes along the way. In the vehicle-heavy meta that we're looking at, that is actually incredibly painful.
Yeah, I don't think I would be super excited to take that on the chin. I mean, standing in front of Exocrines is one of the worst things you can do. And there's a real point in the game with Tyranids where you might be able to get through all the beef, but if you're down on the scoreboard by a certain amount when you get there, you're in trouble. And so because of how dynamic all the multiple heals on these Termagants can be, it's going to be very difficult to disrupt the primary of this list. I expect Sam to put on a pretty good performance this weekend.
Yeah, I do as well. I'm actually quite happy he's not in my pod because I think I'm one of those vehicle-heavy lists that'll struggle to kill as many bodies and will fall victim to his shooting.
That's very fair.
Next up, though, we've got another army that's actually the most popular army at the World Championships of Warhammer, but this one's got a spin to it. This is a Hypercrypt Legion from France. Arnaud Alot is one of their WTC team members. Phenomenal player with a little bit of a different take on the classical shooting Hypercrypt build.
Absolutely. So this list is obviously, it's still Hypercrypt shooting, but it's a little different. We have a Silent King to ignore mods, very powerful these days. Then 1 Hexmark Destroyer carrying Dimensional Sanctum. And so that's I think the one that lets you pick up an extra unit. So you can pick up 4 things from instead of 3 from the detachment rule, which is pretty strong. Beyond that, 2 Canoptic Spiders. That's a nice little bit of a Mortal Wound and Psychic defense. It gives a 5-up Feel No Pain. And then it also gives a 6-up Feel No Pain to the vehicles, which there's a lot of. So this list is going to be even tankier than it looks than normal for Necrons. 2 units of Death Marks, Innate Deep Strike. 3 Triarch Stalkers, shooting that strips cover. 2 Doom Scythes, shooting that will shoot you no matter where you live. 2 Doomsday Arcs, long range shooting. A lot of this deep strikes, a lot of this is going up and down. A lot of it shoots extremely hard, and it's all getting picked up at once.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal stat check army because of the angles that it can shoot you with and the durability it presents. Almost all these vehicles have a 4+ invulnerable save. They have 2 different sources of Feel No Pain against mortals with 2 spiders, and they have enough mission play. There's the Locust Destroyer, the Death Marks, the spiders can do actions, the Hexmark Destroyer floats around as a lone up. It's definitely dancing with the line between not enough stuff and too many guns, but I think he's trying to hit it perfectly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I always notice with Hypercrypt lists is that the more trash you take, the less damage you take. You know, you just can't have it all. There's a lot of damage in this list. The Doomsides ignoring terrain entirely as flyers is particularly scary.
Yeah.
Because you can, if you try to hide from long angles like Doomsday Arc, like the Doomsday Arcs, you're probably behind a terrain feature, and then the Doomsides get you. So you can try to only get hit by half of the list, but that's the half that's going to go up and down each turn. So you're going to have to crack back at some point. I think Arnaud's trying to lure people out so that he can get all of his guns activating. But with the Triarch Stalkers, he has plenty of like cheap vehicles that honestly kind of serve as scoring pieces. Like I think the Triarch Stalkers are multitasking as scoring pieces and as shooting.
Yeah, they're going to be what walks onto those primary objectives and forces you to deal with them. And they also have credible shooting. They make everything recover, and they're hard to kill, especially for 110.
Yeah, they're just not that expensive. Should be a really good list of the various hypercrypts. I like the inclusion of the Triarch Stalkers instead of the monoliths here, and of course, getting the king into a shooting list is only going to make it more.
Hopefully you enjoyed this video. John and I went through and talked about all the different factions and, what are just our thoughts on WCW.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for us to go to this event. Of course, you can expect that we're going to make plenty of more content as soon as we're back from the World Championships of Warhammer. So again, if you want to see all that extra content, make sure you subscribe to this channel. That way you're going to be able to see, all of the content we do. You'll get notified, like the video, leave a comment, and of course, check out the War Room. That's where we're going to put all of our high-level analysis when we're back from playing against the best players in the world.
That's right. So we're not only are we going to go compete against some of the best players, but we're going to share all those insights with you in the War Room. Don't go anywhere. Don't miss it. Check out the link below for your 3-day free trial, theworm.vhx.tv, and we'll see you all later.